Please welcome to the stage, Dr. Drew Ramsey.
There is so much confusion about what to eat today. There is confusion about what foods are healthy and what foods aren't healthy. There's confusion about which foods are best for you and which foods aren't. And of course, there's so much advice about food. Don't eat red meat. Eat more plants. Eat the rainbow. Butter? No butter. Butter? No butter. And of course, don't eat any gluten. I saw a few people in the back smuggling in some scones and white carbs. This is a gluten-free talk. I don't know if you guys heard of that or not. Today, I'm hoping to speak with you because I want to help you clear up some of the confusion about what you eat. And I want to do that by adding a perspective to your food choice. I'd argue the most important perspective. I want you to feed your hungriest, most important cells first. Because today I want to speak with you about how your food relates to your brain health, and by extension, your mental health. Your mood, your cognition, your ability to think and feel, your ability to manifest your mental health. Why is this so important? Why is this such a big idea? Because the top drag on our global economy are mental health problems. The top causes of disability in the world are problems with our mental health. Now, what's this mean, disability? We worry so much about what's going to kill us, and that's something we all have in common. You know, our time here is going to end. Why don't we worry about disability? Disability is when you are not 100% you. You're not as focused as you could be. You're not as happy as you could be. You're not as good of a parent. You're not as good of a worker. You're not as good at being you. You are not 100% you. So I think the best way for us to fight this disability, and the data has been pouring out about this, is to bring these two worlds together. Because our food and our mental health, they are intertwined just like this. If you think about it, every molecule in your brain, right now, all that carbon and nitrogen and B12, it all starts right here. Right at the end of your fork. And think about what's on the end of the fork for most Americans today. White carbs, sugar, the wrong fats, a collection of foods. We call it the SAD diet, the standard American diet. We call it the MAD diet, the modern American diet. I mean, it does make me mad. Why aren't we feeding our brains? On the end of this fork, we're spreading a diet that shrinks and damages the human brain. Now, I don't want that to happen to you. I can tell there are great brains in this room. I want to make sure that you leave here today with 5 foods that are great for your brain. Because our food relates to our brains in 2 fundamental ways. The first way is that the nutrients that make your brain come from your food. And if you look at the statistics in America, we are grossly nutrient deficient. It's surprising, right? People are eating a lot. How can we be so overfed but undernourished? But if you look at the statistics, we are missing some of the most important brain essential nutrients. The second way that our food relates to our mental health, and this is really cool as a brain guy, and it's really great news for you, is that if you eat the right way, your brain can grow into adult life. It can grow and it can reach out, and brain cells will make more connections. It's a concept called neuroplasticity, and it's brand new brain science. We didn't know about this when I was in medical school. I finished medical school in the year 2000. I'm going to be like the doctor of the future, and we didn't even know the most important fact about the human brain, that the human brain has the capacity to grow. Brain cells, they love to connect. Brain cells are kind of like Facebook. Like they want more connections, and when they reach out and they make more connections, that's good for your brain. Brain growth also means that you can give birth to new brain cells. I mean, who in here couldn't use a few new brain cells? I could use some new brain cells. Right? That'd be great for you. It all revolves around a molecule called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This is a growth factor for your brain. And who wouldn't want more of that? You can get more of that by focusing on these 5 foods. Now, does it work? It sounds like a kind of crazy promise. We can fight mental health with food? Well, check out some of these statistics. Who wouldn't want a smarter planet? If I had a ticket to a smarter planet, who wouldn't want to go there? Well, we could have a smarter planet if everyone got enough iron. There are 2 billion people on planet Earth who are iron deficient. And when you're iron deficient, your brain doesn't develop correctly. Researchers estimate our planet would have a 13% higher IQ if we ate the right foods, if everyone got enough iron. What about happier? We can fight depression with food. The science has been pouring in over the last decade that if we eat a whole foods, plant-based diets with some carefully selected meats and seafood, that the risk of depression can drop by as much as 40%. Think about that, 40%. Today, 10% of the US population takes an antidepressant. We know millions of people are struggling with depression. Think of how it would change the dial on our mental health if we all ate to feed our brain. So this is my promise to you. This is my hope, that you will have a stronger, happier, more resilient brain if you feed it with the right food, if you activate BDNF, and if your brain is fully nourished. Now, I stumbled into this a little bit. About 10 years ago, I was sitting with a young woman, and I was using the 2 main tools of the trade in psychiatry, medications and talk therapy, and neither one of those had really worked for her. She was sitting on my couch in the early afternoon, tearful, distraught, depressed, irritable. She wasn't sleeping well. And she looked at me and said, "So what now?" I kind of stumbled. I didn't have much of an answer. And I stumbled into a question. I said, "Well, tell me what you had for breakfast." She hadn't had breakfast. She, in fact, had cut out whole swaths of food out of her diet. She wasn't eating meat or seafood. She wasn't even eating dairy or grains. She wasn't eating a whole set of foods that her brain needs. No wonder she was struggling so much. That moment when I said, "What now?" because I didn't really know about food. I went to one of the top medical schools in America. I trained at probably the top psychiatric training center in the world, at Columbia. And throughout my training, I did not have one single course on food. What now, I thought? What do I do? Well, I tell patients all the time when they're in a jam, your next step is your best step. So I took that next step, and I started talking to every single patient I met about what they eat in a kind of obsessive psychiatric kind of way. Everything. Tell them about your breakfast, tell them about your dinner, what do you like, you have any allergies, would your mom feed you? Because doesn't every patient need an assessment? I mean, not only are we confused about food, boy, healthcare is confused about food. We're so confused about food, we don't even ask you about it. I mean, think about all the questions you fill out on those questionnaires, right? Your social security number, your insurance card. You never actually fill out questions about your food. Where is the advice about mental health and food? We talk about obesity and diabetes and cancer. Why aren't we talking about the most disabling illnesses on the planet? Why aren't we talking about how you can prevent mental health problems and help people get better? Because mental health is on a spectrum, right? We have people who are really struggling. They need meds and psychotherapy. Well, aren't those interventions going to work a little better? Much better. In fact, they can't work unless the brain's fully nourished. And if you're over on this end of the spectrum, maybe you're one of those unicorns that doesn't have any mental health problems, because, I mean, another thing we have in common, I've got one of those human brains, right? And it's like sometimes it doesn't exactly work right? If you're up here doing well, the thing that's going to help you keep resilience, that's going to keep you from drifting down, is your food. So doesn't everybody deserve a brain food prescription? If you think about the nutrients as the gears in this diagram, if you're missing just one of the brain essential nutrients, your brain's not going to work as well. So a colleague and I thought about what would be the most important brain essential nutrients. We rate foods in all kinds of ways, right? We have the Andy, we have all kinds of numerical ways to parse out what foods are good for you. What about just focusing on the most important essential nutrients for your brain? So that's what we did. We created the brain food scale. And it looks something like this. On the top are the most important nutrients for your brain. They're nutrients that if you're missing, your brain's going to break. You're going to end up in my office. We're going to meet on the business end of my couch. And you all look lovely. I'd love to meet you, but you don't want to meet me like that. You don't want to be a psychiatric patient. If we're going to keep your brain well fed, we need to find the foods that have the most of these nutrients for the fewest number of calories. That woman ended up eating better. She got better. And I want to take you into my office and have you meet another young man. He came to me also very depressed. He had launched into life after college. He had not been doing very well. He was sad. He was hopeless. He was living at home. He'd done really well in college. He kind of blossomed, and now his life was failing. He was failing, and he never wanted to see a psychiatrist. I asked him about what he eats, and now with everyone taking pictures of their food, it's actually much easier to take a food journal. And look up here. I call this the beige diet, or and it is not full of brain essential nutrients, right? Mainly up here are white carbohydrates. Everything that you see is white is glucose, is a carbohydrate. I said, eat the rainbow. He said, you mean the gummy bear rainbow? It's like, not the gummy bear rainbow. He had to change his food if he was going to get better. And he did this starting with a blender. Now, what's missing from his diet? What's missing from this diet up here as you look through it? Well, one thing that for sure is missing is Tom was eating no kale. I said, Tom, you're a single guy in New York City. Man, you live in Brooklyn. You got to break out the kale skills to make some ladies. Come on. You got to massage the kale, make some kale chips, go to the park, let the smell waft out. You're not going to be single for long. Now, why do we want Tom to eat more kale? Well, kale is a great example that we want people to eat more plants. And we want people to eat more plants for several reasons. One is plants contain these magic molecules for us. They contain phytonutrients. You only find them in the plants, and they sing to our DNA. Your genes actually recognize them. There's one in kale called sulforaphane, and it actually increases the detoxification abilities of your liver. It's a real detox diet. When we say eat the rainbow, we're talking about eating a variety of phytonutrients. Every color up there represents a different molecule that is absolutely important for your health. We also want people to eat more plants because more fibrous foods means feeding the microbiome, all these bugs in your gut. And for 100 years in medicine, we've been killing bacteria, antibiotics, antibacterial soaps, and all of a sudden it's like, oops, all those bacteria are actually essential for your health. The types of gut bugs that are in your gut actually dictate a lot about your brain health. So we want Tom to eat more fibrous foods, more plants, more kale to get his gut running well. Now, when you do eat the rainbow, there's a little side effect. This can happen, rainbow finger. You just get so happy, rainbows shoot out of your fingers. But it's a little scary at first, but you get used to it. There are 1 million genes in your gut, bacterial genes, and they do all kinds of amazing things. You are only 23,000 genes, so eating more plants helps support your gut's health. Because if you're not regular down here, you really have two brains. If you're not regular down here, it's very hard to be regular up here because your gut health is needed to absorb all these nutrients. So kale. Kale teaches us 3 lessons that you have to take out of the room. Number 1 is nutrient density. That's the most bang for your buck. Now look at this. Kale, 33 calories, just 33 calories in 1 cup of kale. You get over 600% of your vitamin K. You get over 200% of your vitamin A. You get over 130% of your vitamin C. Plus, you get some fiber, you get some folate, you get iron, you get the most absorbable form of calcium. Whew, that's nutrient density. So kale teaches us 3 rules. Don't call her kale anymore. Call her Dr. Kale, because this food is medicine. 3 lessons. Number 1, nutrient density. You have to eat for nutrient density. We have a country that is living on empty calories. Case in point, the average teenage boy in America gets 25% of their calories from soda. 0 brain nutrients. The second rule of kale is about flexibility. You want to pick foods that are fun and flexible in your kitchen. Come over to my house. We're going to have kale and eggs in the morning. Maybe we'll have a kale smoothie. For lunch, you could have a kale salad. We can make some kale chips. You could have some kale pesto. You could end the evening with a kale hito. I got a little secret. I love mac and cheese. Kale mac and cheese. Grind up a few cups, put it in there. Kale increases the nutrient density of all of those meals. And the third lesson of kale is we have to recommend foods that are available, that you can afford, that you can find anywhere. We heard from Priscilla Ware, people about Kenya. That's the first time I ate kale. right in the cradle of the human brain, the cradle of mankind in Africa. I was there as a medical student, and there's a dish called sukuma wiki. Sukuma wiki means push the week. It means when you're running low on money and you need a food that's gonna get you through the day, eat sukuma wiki. Sukuma wiki is sauteed kale and collard greens. Kale's not a fad food, folks. Kale's an original human food. And incorporating foods like kale and following these 3 rules, nutrient density, flexibility, and availability, will guide us towards healthier, happier brains. So I told you 5 foods. Kale and plants like kale are one, and they are at the top of the brain food scale because they have so many nutrients that are key for the brain. Number 2, Tom's got no seafood in his diet. We've gotten him going now with a little kale. He's dropping a little kale leaf in his blender. His mom thought he was insane. Then she drank it. She's like, ooh, this is pretty good, actually. No seafood. What do we need with seafood? Seafood contains the 2 essential building blocks of the human brain. And without seafood in your diet, you're missing those. The first are the omega-3 fats. These are the longest fats in your body. And you only find long-chain omega-3 fats in seafood. Now people are like, oh, I got my omega-3 fats, I got my fish oil pill. It's like, how many people in here have one of those like stinky old bottles of fish oil pill sitting in your medicine cabinet? And she's like, yeah, I don't really take those. We need to eat fish. And if you don't like fish, hey, there's more fish in the sea. Tom was not a big fish eater, and neither was I. I grew up on a farm in southern Indiana. To me, seafood meant fish sticks. I didn't really start eating seafood till I moved to New York City. And now I eat oysters with abandon. I've tried all types of seafood. You have to adjust your palate a little bit and get these foods into your diet. Why? Well, let's look at the oyster, an original human food. Look at that nutrient density. How many calories are in 6 oysters? I love asking this question to groups. I asked this question to a group of physicians once, and a doctor stood up very, very clearly and said, there are 1,500 calories in 6 oysters. It's like, oh, no wonder we're confused, medicine. 60 calories in 6 oysters, and look at the nutrients you get. Zinc, 500% of your zinc. The majority of Americans do not get enough zinc in their diet. Like 80% of Americans don't get enough zinc in your diet. 6 oysters, you get 500%. Zinc is one of those nutrients, gets your brain going into grow mode. Nuts. Now, people stopped eating nuts because nuts are a fatty food, right? I got a little secret for you. You know what your brain's made of? Your brain is mainly made of fat. And nuts are on sale. I don't know that anybody saw the headline recently. The USDA just said, whoops. We've been overestimating the calories in nuts. Nuts have 25% fewer calories than we've been telling you. So by focusing on nuts, right, look at that. Instead of 160 calories in 22 almonds, actually it's probably only about 120. And look at the nutrition you get out of those 22 almonds. Essential brain nutrients. Vitamin E, a nutrient that takes care of your brain fat. It's a fat-soluble vitamin. Now, I told you 5 foods, and I'm going to make them rhyme for you, so it's just real easy to remember. Seafood, greens, nuts, and beans. Beans and legumes like lentils. Now, we eat way too much animal protein in our diet. Americans eat about 270 pounds of meat per person per year. And we have to replace those with some plant-based proteins, both for the health of our planet and because those foods, again, contain phytonutrients. They contain fiber. They are very nutrient dense. Look at that. Folate, absolutely essential for brain function and brain development. 90% in just 1 cup of lentils. And look at all the protein you get. You get all of the basic ingredients to start building a better brain. Seafood, greens, nuts, and beans. Oh, and there's one more. Well, gee, I mean, what meal wouldn't be complete with a little dark chocolate? Now you think I'm just trying to make this whole brain food thing a little bit sweeter, but no. Recently at Columbia University, a neurologist, Scott Small, did a study. He took some extracts from cacao, and he gave them to people who were having age-related memory decline. And it reversed. Their brain scans changed. Their psychological tests changed. A molecule from nature reversed age-related memory decline. Dark chocolate increases blood flow to the brain. It's one of the few foods that's been shown to actually acutely boost mood and boost focus. Seafood, greens, nuts, and beans, and a little dark chocolate. We are facing a global epidemic of mental health problems. It can get better. The solution can start with you. It can start at the end of your fork at lunch today. By changing what we eat, and by focusing on feeding the most important cells in your body, your brain cells, we can change the dial on global mental health. And that is an idea worth spreading. Thank you.